Boxes. In my closet are two boxes, the gatherings of my life. Papers, school drawings, a broken hairpin, a dress for my baby days, my first lock of hair, a tiny basket woven from prairie grass, a doll with a china head, a pink ball, 3 dozen marbles, a fan from Baxter's funeral home, my baby teeth in a glass jar, a torn map of the world, two candy wrappers, 1,000 things I haven't looked at in years. I kept promising Ma to go through the boxes and get rid of what I didn't need, but I never got to it. And now my hands hurt, and I haven't got the heart. September 1934. Night Bloomer. Mrs. Brown's cereus plant bloomed on Saturday night. She sent word after promising I could come see it. I rubbed my gritty eyes with swollen hands. My stomach grizzled as I made my way through the dark to her house. Ma wouldn't have let me go at all. My father just stood in the doorway and watched me leave. It was almost 3 in the morning when I got there. A small crowd stood around. Mrs. Brown said, "The blossom opened at midnight, big as a dinner plate." It took only moments to unfold. How can such a flower find a way to bloom in this drought, in this wind? It blossomed at night, when the sun couldn't scorch it, when the wind was quiet, when there might have been a sip of dew to freshen it. I couldn't watch at dawn, when the newer, touched by the first finger of morning light, wilted and died. I couldn't watch as the tender petals burned up in the sun. September 1934. The Path of Our Sorrow. Miss Freeland said, "During the Great War, we fed the world. We couldn't grow enough wheat to fill all the bellies. The price the world paid for our wheat was so high it swelled our wallets and our heads. And we bought bigger tractors, more acres, until we had mortgages and rent and bills beyond reason. But we all felt so useful we didn't notice. Then the war ended, and before long, Europe didn't need our wheat anymore. They could grow their own. But we needed Europe's money to pay our mortgage, our rent, our bills. We squeezed more cattle, more sheep, onto less land, and they grazed down the stubble till they reached the root. And the price of wheat kept dropping, so we had to grow more bushels to make the same amount of money we made before, to pay for all that equipment, all that land. And the more sod we plowed up, the drier things got. Because the water that used to collect there under the grass, biding its time, keeping things alive through the dry spells, wasn't there anymore. Without the sod, the water vanished. The soil turned to dust until the wind took it, lifting it up and carrying it away. Such a sorrow doesn't come suddenly. There are 1,000 steps to take before you get there. But now, sorrow climbs up our front steps big as Texas, and we didn't even see it coming, even though it had been making its way straight for us all along. Autumn 1934. Hired work. My father hired on at Wireless Power on Tuesday, excavating for towers. He said, "I'm good at digging, and everyone who knows about our hole knows he's telling the truth." He might as well earn a couple dollars. It doesn't look good for the winter crop. Earning some cash will make him feel better. I don't think he'll drink it up. He hasn't done that since Ma. It's hard to believe I once brought money in too, even if it was just a dime now and then for playing piano. Now, I can't hardly stay in the same room with one, especially Ma's. October 1934. Almost rain. It almost rained Saturday. The clouds hung low over the farm. The air felt thick. It smelled like rain. In town, the sidewalks got damp. That was all. November 1934. Those hands. The Wildcats started practice this week. Coach Albright used to say I could play for them. "You've got what it takes, Billy Joe. Look at the size of those hands," he'd say. "Look at how tall." I'd tell him, "Just because I'm tall doesn't mean I can play basketball, or even that I want to." But he'd say I should play anyway. Coach Albright didn't say anything about basketball this year. I haven't gotten any shorter. It's because of my hands. My father used to say, "Why not put those hands to good use?" He doesn't say anything about those hands anymore. Only Arlie Wanderdale talks about them, and how they could play piano again. If only I would try. November 1934. Real snow. The dust stopped and it snowed. Real snow. Dreamy Christmas snow. Gentle. Nothing blowing. Such calm, like after a fever. Wet, clinging to the earth, melting into the dirt. Snow. Oh, the grass and the wheat and the cattle and the rabbits and my father will be happy. November 1934. Dance Review. Vera Wanderdale is putting on a dance review at the Palace, and Arlie asked if I'd play a number with the Black Mesa Boys. It's hard coming onto Christmas, just me and my father, with no ma and no little brother. I don't really feel like doing anything. Still, I told Arlie I would try, just because it looked like it meant a lot to him. He said he'd be dancing then, so he needed a piano player, and Mad Dog would be singing. And he knew how I'd just loved to be connected with anything Mad Dog's doing. The costumes Vera ordered come all the way from the city, she said. Special, the latest cuts. I wish I could go with her to pick them up. During rehearsals, Mad Dog comes off the stage after his numbers and stands by the piano. He doesn't look at me like I'm a poor motherless thing. He doesn't stare at my deformed hands. He looks at me like I am someone he knows, someone named Billy Joe Kelby. And I'm grateful for that, especially considering how bad I'm playing. December 1934. Mad Dog's Tale. Mad Dog is surrounded by girls. They ask him how he got his name. He says, it's not because I'm wild or a crazy, untamed boy, but because 14 years ago when I was 2, I would bite anything I could catch a hold of. My ma, my brother, Doc Rice, even Reverend Bingham. So my father named me Mad Dog, and it stuck. When I go home, I ask my father if he knows Mad Dog's real name. He looks at me like I'm talking another language. Ma could have told me. December 1934. Art exhibit. We had an art exhibit last week in the basement of the courthouse to benefit the library. Price of admission was 1 book or 10 cents. I paid 10 cents the first time, but they let me in a second and third times for free. That was awful kind, since I didn't have another dime and I couldn't bring myself to hand over Ma's book of poetry from the shelf over the piano. It was really something to see the oil paintings, the watercolors, the pastels and charcoals. There were pictures of the Panhandle in the old days with the grass blowing and wolves. There was a painting of a woman getting dressed in a room of curtains and a drawing of a railroad station with a garden out front, and a sketch of a little girl holding an enormous cat in her lap. But now the exhibit is gone. The paintings stored away in spare rooms or locked up where no one can see them. I feel such a hunger to see such things, and such an anger because I can't. December 1934.